Apologize for the delay. Welcome to the April 12th, 2016 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. Commission members are appointed by the Board of Selectmen to promulgate the rules and regulations of the State Wetlands Protection Act and the Milton Town Bylaw governing the wetlands. As a matter of formality, two things. We introduce ourselves. We have a recorder running here so that if you wish to speak, you're welcome to speak, but we ask that you identify yourself, introduce yourself for the record.
Judith Darrell Kemp.
My name is John Kiernan.
Michael Blute.
Arthur Doyle.
Ingrid Beatty.
Jackie Bowen.
First on the agenda is request for determination of applicability, Keola's commuter service, the purple line. Anyone here? Aha. Seeing none, I think they're duty bound to be here. Did you know they were not coming?
Yeah, I spoke to him today, and he said that if you want to continue to May, that's fine, he could not make it tonight.
All right. The purpose of this is to approve a new 5-year vegetation management plan, and generally they're pretty good at that. The last time, I think it was the MBTA and not the commuter rail, but somebody nuked a section of the river, down by the Adams Street Bridge. Mm-hmm. I don't know what they used on that, but
Steel and
rye.
Steep slope.
Steep slope,
Yeah.
right. I hope they never use that again. So I think we really should pay attention to what chemicals they're using. This is for defoliation purposes, to keep the, what are they called?
Catenary lines.
Yeah, catenary lines.
Catenary lines, yeah.
Right, the trees have to be a certain distance back, and they do have a right and duty and responsibility to keep those lines clear, but sometimes they get overly exuberant. So
This is the train line that goes from Reedville to Hyde Park, and just a little piece of it goes along by the Neponset, then up into Mattapan Square.
So we'll continue this until May.
Okay.
Right? Thanks. Next on the agenda is modification of order of conditions at 35 Chesterfield Street. Anybody appearing on that? Hi, good evening, welcome.
It's 37 Chesterfield, that's my address, I think you said a typo there on the number.
37 Chesterfield.
Yes.
Could you introduce yourself and then
Sure.
tell us what the amendments are?
Good evening, my name is Mark Fitzgerald, I'm a resident of 37 Chesterfield. George Collins did the survey, he couldn't be here tonight, but we were asking for the commission to accept minor revisions, minor modifications. The modifications were made to conform with zoning, and zoning has actually now approved it. What the modifications were was to deal with there was a variance issue that we had with the town, so we had to move our garage, we had to move the plan 7 feet closer to our home. And then what happened was we moved it back 6 feet in the plans, and you'll see that on the first floor. But it doesn't in essence change anything closer to the brook. We had a breezeway in that area anyway that went back, and we were actually getting rid of that. But it went back a little bit, and it went back not even as far as the deck. If you see in our plans, the deck that had gone back, which you had already approved on a prior hearing in February.
The original stairs, that is now going to be encompassed by the footprint of the house.
Yes.
Are you not going to have a set of stairs for the now extended patio on that side? I see the one, when you're looking at the brook to the left, there's a
Yes.
set of stairs, but it looks like you're losing, there must have been porch stairs on the right-hand side,
Yes, there were porch stairs. That's
but
correct.
those are gone
Those
now.
are gone.
All right. So that the 6-foot extension is kind of a trade-off so that you can get your 10-foot setback?
It's a trade-off.
Okay. All right, this is for the public's consumption. This does not infringe upon the 25-foot non-disturbance zone, which we get a little bit cranky about.
Correct.
Only for purposes of uniformity and consistency, so we treat all applicants the same. But you're outside of that 25-foot non-disturbance zone, which is good. Anybody have any questions?
In the original proposal, when we walked the site, were you maintaining the footprint of, the original proposal was based on maintaining the footprint, and you weren't doing any foundation work, is that correct?
We were maintaining the footprint, and we weren't, correct.
You were not doing any
Well,
foundation work?
we were doing a foundation work in the garage. Some demolition in the garage and some foundation work there. But the same footprint. But with the demolition work, the way the town zoning laws, and I'm not an expert in this,
Sure.
is once you knock down the garage, it creates a new sort of parameter, so to
Right.
speak, for lack of a better term. So we had to move in. We could have waited.
Right.
Long story short, we're having our third child in about any minute. So we're going to start renovations. So we decided to get the process started sooner rather than later. So the architect redesigned the plans.
The only, just my concern is that appropriate controls and the contractor is careful, because the excavations now, you're going to be crowding the non-disturbance in terms of your limit of work, the hay bales. The distance you have from the new foundation to the hay bales, by the time you do the excavation and he needs additional distance for that in order to be able to excavate down, he's got to be careful about the back.
Okay. I think he set up a, yeah, the parameter is pretty good, though. It's set up. He set it up already, yeah.
But
And
I'm just saying that when he does his excavation, it's not just in line with where the foundation's gonna be. He actually has to over-excavate it so that he can put the foundation, and then he'll backfill.
He might have to. I don't know if he has to over-excavate it or not, but, okay, I understand that.
Yeah. But just, it'll be tight.
Okay.
You're saying that you don't extend out beyond the existing footprint.
That's the new footprint.
Right, but this is the existing one. So in fact, you're going out about a foot all the way in the back. See how this is the
That one we already-
existing?
That you already
That's the
approved.
deck, and we already.
That's the
Right,
deck.
right. And so you're going out about a foot beyond that.
No, the deck is further out. The deck is what you approved.
Right.
The existing, the area that we're extending is actually going to be shorter than the deck.
That's over here.
On that side?
Right.
I see. Okay.
And what's going on at the side of the house? Are you just grassing that area? That, your
Oh,
increased
yeah, we're
space?
just, yeah, I don't, we're just, that area is empty right now, yeah.
Okay. Now, apropos of what Mike just said to you, one of our, we call it boilerplate, but it's something we put in all the orders of conditions. You can't store overnight that equipment, and that excavation equipment is going to be hydraulically driven.
Right.
And we don't want, you can't store it overnight, and you can't refuel that. So the contractor's going to have to be aware of that condition so that they don't keep anything next to the brook.
Okay.
Because if they blow a hydraulic line, all of that oil, or whatever it is,
Right.
goes into the brook.
Yeah, I think
Refuel on
they,
site.
What's that?
Can't refuel on
Cannot
site.
refuel.
right, they understand that. We talked about that and said that you guys might mention that at the
Okay.
commission.
So they're gonna have to store it out front. You've got you're supposed to be out about 100 feet. So I don't know, do you have a construction plan that says how long they're gonna be there excavating?
Off the top of my head, I do not know that answer.
All right. Contractors typically try to say, don't worry about it. We'll only be there a couple of days, and they store their equipment, next to some of the resource areas. So we'd like to keep an eye on that and to make sure that the contractors sign off on that restriction,
Okay.
all right? It shouldn't fall on your shoulders.
Falls on the
I mean, it
contractor's
ultimately
shoulders.
will,
Well,
you're
yeah, I
the
understand
applicant,
that. If something, if there's an issue.
you've got to lean on them.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Are there abutters here, members of the public that have a question or like to ask a question? Hearing none. Now, we've already issued the order for the deck. So this is essentially whether, the decision is whether or not this is a minor modification. If it's a minor modification, we can just amend the order of conditions. If it's a significant alteration, then they'd have to file a new notice of intent. Is there a motion to consider this as a minor modification?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? All right, and so you can stay with the same order of conditions that you've got, but just make sure that, we're gonna make sure that when we reissue the order of conditions, that it does have those restrictions on there. So you can't store them overnight, I meant the equipment.
Right.
And you can't refuel
Okay.
there, okay?
All right. How, just, I don't want to waste too much time. How quickly do the new order of conditions, Ms. Bowen?
Right there.
Where do they come out?
We will sign it tonight, and it'll take a while.
Okay. Do you email, is it an email thing, or is it
No, you
mail?
have to file.
Pick it up,
with
or?
the, I'll explain to you on the telephone.
Okay.
You have to file.
All right, great.
with Adam.
All right.
Good, thank you very much.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good luck.
Good luck with the baby.
Yeah, we need it.
We've all been there.
3, that would be zone defense, right?
All right,
Good luck with that.
Number 3 on the list, a request for modification of an order of conditions, 395 Hillside Street. This is a continued hearing. Good evening.
Good evening. You do have copies of a plan that I filed. Excuse me, I'm Mary McKettrick, representing the applicant. And I filed a plan with the commission, large copies on Monday, which is the one you should be looking at. That's this. Is it a little copy?
It's not in your package, it's in front of
Oh,
you.
it's in the packet? Thank you.
And along with the plan, I filed a letter last week, as well as a letter on February 4th, explaining the reasons for this application. So just to review, what's happened is in the course of doing detailed design work and meeting with the owners of this property, the owners requested that that we ask permission to have a landing placed at the edge of the porch. And in addition to that, the grade of the land required two additional steps be added. So one reason for the landing was that with those additional steps, it was more of a distance down, and the owners are, I don't know, about my age, they felt more comfortable having a landing outside there than stepping right out onto the
Very
steps.
youthful people.
Yes, they're very youthful there. But, so they met with the Milton Tremitsis, who's the project manager. He asked me what would be the process for requesting these changes, and I said I didn't know. I came to the commission, I think, 2 meetings ago, and you said that you would consider approving it as a minor modification, but that you needed a plan so that you could see what the change was to be. So this plan shows the landing. It shows the new proposed number of steps. And I gave you an additional memo, which you should have with your plan, correcting my letter of last week, which said it was an increase of 20 square feet. The architect's drawing numbers were incorrect, and it's 24 square feet. You now have a correct plan that shows that it's 24 square feet when the dimensions are calculated. So this is a change because in the original order of conditions, one of the conditions actually references the number of square feet in the porch and the stairs. And so in order to increase that square footage at all, I have to come back to you and ask for approval of a change. And this will be an increase of 24 square feet. As I explained in my letter, the direction and the design of the stairs has not been changed other than to add those 2 additional steps in the landing. It's facing in the direction away from the 25-foot area. It's above ground. I think you asked at the last meeting how the landing would be supported and how the bottom of the steps were supported. The project manager has explained to me that there's been no change in that design, and the upper part of the landing will be supported by 2 sonotubes. I hope you know what that is, because I don't. And then that the bottom part of the landing will be supported by a 12 inch by 12 inch grade beam at the base of the stairs, and that will be made of poured concrete. So again, I'm not too sure what that means, but hopefully you understand.
Quick question? Can you, that's all great. Can you explain the graphic, the intent for what the walkway is, and whether that implies curbs or, to me, it looks like it's a gravel or something like that, but do you know what the intent is for the landing on ground?
The material.
Yeah, the material. Just, they've shown a graphic,
You
but
mean
they
the
haven't,
Do you think that's a pathway?
yeah, it looks like a
looks
path.
it,
It
yeah.
looks like a path. It looks like it's gravel.
Or it could be pavers.
And it,
We haven't proposed putting pavers in there. I mean, we proposed a landscaping plan for you originally. This area was, is,
well, that's not where I was going. I just want to
yeah,
understand what it was.
I understand the question. It should be no more than gravel at most, and that would only be because there's probably a gravel surface in this area already.
Okay.
I don't know if you recall when we took the site, this is a long time ago when you walked the site, but the grade is steep here, as you can see from this indication. It's already landscaped and there are stone steps. And down in this area where the porch stairs come out, it's kind of grassy, kind of rocky. There's some fairly large rocks scattered around the backyard. If this is a gravel path, then it's not, I think it
it's
might
not
just
on the
be for
plan.
Well,
absorption. I don't think it's a
Well, I'm not worried
path.
about the absorption. I just want to understand what it was. And to me, the graphics imply to me that it's a path and that
Okay.
it may have a curb. But my real concern was just making sure that there was something of a landing at the bottom of the stairs. I mean, this doesn't imply, it kind of graphically shows something, but it doesn't call out what it is. And in the same way that you were talking about needing a landing at the top of the stairs, the landing at the bottom is just as important.
Right, but aren't they stepping onto the gravel?
But we don't know that it's gravel, we don't know that it's level, we don't know what it is. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this, I'm just saying, if you could make sure that they actually have a landing at the bottom for someone to step onto the yard, because I do recall that it was steep.
Well, I'm sure these plans have to be reviewed by the building commissioner, so I can't answer the question. I could call Milton
No,
Tremitzis,
that's all
though,
right.
if you'd like, and get an answer from him. I will certainly give you an answer back.
Okay.
I will explain, I'll send a memo tomorrow explaining what that means in the
Yeah, what's the
drawing.
graphic mean? Yeah.
And is it a level gravel area that people step into? So you're concerned about the safety
Well,
and also what it's being
what it is.
surfaced with
Right, what
because
it's
of
being
the
surfaced with.
absorbency.
Yep.
So I haven't been given information that there's any change in, that it's going to be anything other than gravel and grass. But the question, I thought that was just part of the,
And I'd agree
Drawing
with,
of the-
I'd agree with Mike on part of it,
yeah.
but that goes far beyond, I mean, what we're looking at graphically goes far beyond a safe landing.
Yes.
And
Sure,
that's
yeah.
not part of our original approval.
No, it isn't. That's why I would question too.
We're trying to keep it in its natural state, and that goes far beyond that. And it does look graphically like it's
path.
it's got
Yeah.
borders and curbs and it's shaped.
It's
Doesn't
landscape
look very
construction.
nat-
Looks like landscape construction
Right.
Yes, right, and that's
by the
not part of
drawing.
our
We
approval.
don't know if
Unless
that's,
there's already something, I'll have to
I
find
don't
out.
think there is.
I don't recall.
Actually, I will call Milton after because, I told him I would do that. He asked me if he should be here. I said, well, as long as I can reach you, and if they have any other questions, I'll do that, and I'll come back and give you some information. But I guess the question is, yes, there shouldn't be different landscaping than what was originally proposed. So if this is a new gravel path, then we would need to come back in and talk to you about it, correct?
Correct.
So, and if it's not, then what is that depiction supposed to be?
Right.
Second question is, just at the bottom of the stairs, you want to know that there's a level
Yeah.
area to step into.
Right.
And that could be gravel, I assume,
Right.
or, okay. So I'll call him and get answers to those questions. Anything else?
No, but
need
I
to
think we don't have to wait for your answer, because
think so.
all you're asking for right now is whether or not the landing.
Yeah, I'm not
I
asking
think
for
it's-
approval of a change in the landscaping, but
Okay.
it's a good
All right.
question.
So we just don't want to sign a blank check that,
No, of course
whatever
not.
somebody
Yeah.
envisions graphically, we're not signing off on that.
I will find out what the story is on that
Okay.
depiction and what it means. But right now, tonight, I'm just asking for whether you can approve the additional 2 steps and the landing, which adds 24 square feet to the area of the porch and the steps. So,
Are there any abutters here or members of the public that have a question or comment? Seeing none, is there a motion to entertain this proposed revision as a minor modification so that we can keep the same order conditions?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I'm going to recuse myself because Milton Tremitzis is doing a little bit of work at my house, hopefully at some point, so I'm going to stay out of the voting.
Okay.
Okay.
As long as we know that the modification is the landing and the increased steps, which was what the request was.
Right. And the graphics for whatever the path or whatever they're showing otherwise is not
It's
in the
not
scope
before
of
us.
consideration, right?
That is correct. That is the motion. All in favor? None. Okay.
okay, thank you very much.
Darren, will you be able to get back to Kathy on that, or Mike, or somebody, just to kind of plug
Probably
the
in a few
information?
minutes, quietly. I'll write out a little note.
All right, thank you very much. Next on the agenda, at number 4, is Enforcement Order 1131 Randolph Avenue. Hey, good evening all.
Good evening. My name is Jim Burke. I am with the Burke and Associates, and I'm here tonight with Mr. John Tobin, who was the owner of 1131 Randolph Ave, and I've drafted a letter that kind of outlines what we're going to be discussing tonight. As it turns out, Mr. Thomas, who's been operating the property as a nursery, basically went in there and cleared out all his old stock and planning to put some new stock in. In that response, we were doing some earlier work. We permitted some improvements to the property for that Town Tree was using. So John gave me a call and says, you know, where's the wetlands over in this area? So I gave Scotty Morrison a call. He went out and flagged it. We went out and located it and generated this plan. The one right behind you. You got a room for that side over there as well. Really kind of quick down here, but the original line that we had delineated before stopped at...
Hold on one second,
Sure.
Jim, just orientate, where's Randolph Ave?
Oh, Randolph Ave,
Okay,
up top.
it's there, yes.
All right,
Okay.
and this is that replication area that we did with Steve Ives?
Yes.
Mike, I'm sorry. This is that replication area we did with Steve Ives, I don't know, 2 years ago. And that's all done, all that work, and we owe you guys an as-built, but that's another story. So I asked Scott to come off that line and delineate across the property. There were some other wetland flags over here that we didn't locate, but as I felt they might have been off locus, but they were
Is
close.
that for the pool?
Yeah, the pool's right back over on that, running up that side.
Yeah, there was a pool going in over here. This line here is limit of current vegetation that wraps around in this location. As you can see, there's some work that was done in the 25-foot no disturb buffer. We're here tonight to really, kind of feel you guys out, find out what your thoughts are with regards to responding to this. But keep in mind that it's agricultural use, and it's allowed under the Wetlands Protection Act, both locally and state. But like I say, there's no order of conditions issued. I think the best process maybe is just to pursue that in the future, come up with some sort of
Pursue it, what do you mean pursue it?
an order of conditions for the continued management of this land, which we want to use as future nursery stock.
Who's we? Is it a commercial venture? I mean, is the trust, all right, but,
He's renting that one field. It has been since about 1991.
okay.
And they
We
went
saw
out there and
that.
did some maintenance and removed quite a bit of dead stock and ran it through a chipper
Yeah.
with the intent of replacing it, and then we realized they're too close.
Okay.
The ground is covered right now by wood chips, and it's stable, and there's no sediment transport or anything like that generating off the site, no rutting or anything like that I noticed. But like I say, Mr. Thomas is looking to get back in there and replant stock, and that's what we'd like to do.
Can I?
Understand, yeah.
So, I'd like to just propose that we post the 25-foot basically just post it. With posts at every, whatever kind of spacing you want to say, and then let them work up to that line. Because then that way, there's no confusion on their part about where the line is, and then at the same time, we're flagging it based on what it is right now. And
Jim
that,
and I were talking about that. Could we also plant a tree line in there? Or some sort of planting
yeah.
that they couldn't go beyond?
Yeah, as long as there's an understanding of what that is and that it's not something they're gonna rip out and sell.
Yeah, sell it, yeah, right.
Yeah. But the idea is just to, I don't believe they knew where the line was, and they were working at the edge of the property and of what they could use, and I think it's in good faith to say, now we know that there's an issue, let's flag where, kind of post where it is or indicate where it is, and and let them continue.
You may be 100% right, but if we don't see it in an order of conditions, there are some other issues out there, and that is what kind of fertilizers are being used. I mean, you're sitting right on a pretty sensitive wetland. Sensitive because it had some other problems when it was filling, and that was at the, that wasn't the Copeland Trust, I understand that, but it was one of the
Yeah.
tenants. It was, you know, expanding the parking lot into the wetlands. So I think we have to be a little bit careful, because I know when we did a site walk there, we saw some of the most bizarre colors I have ever seen in my life. And I don't know what it came from, but it didn't look like it came from Mother Nature. I don't know what it was. That was before we had Steve Ivas on board. We were all up there looking at it.
Right.
It was
You're talking
scary.
about the other one. You're talking about
Right there, right where the
the red.
replication area is.
The red,
Yeah, the orange is red.
no, the red marks
Oh,
on
the red
your-
markers, I mean, but the colors in the
There were some
water.
rusty colors that Steve,
Right, now, I know what iron is.
Green,
I've
there
I've
was-
seen
yeah,
iron. This
there
stuff
was-
would light up in the dark.
Iridescent, yeah, it was iridescent, oily, kind
Yeah.
of looked a little oily. Yeah,
It was scary.
All right.
So I think we have
noticed
to
that.
be careful about what chemicals are
Okay.
being used.
So, how would you like us to proceed?
I'd like an order of conditions. We'd
So
like
you-
to see, let's take a look at it first to see what the.
So you want us to
Scott
file a
wants.
notice of intent with exactly that for our intent?
Yes.
Okay.
What if you made the whole area organic? What if you said, I'm gonna raise organic shrubs and trees and sell them as such? Put no chemicals in.
You can still overload the nitrogens, even with organic. I mean, you could put cow manure there and you
I
could.
can speak to Mr. Thomas about that, he's due back shortly.
Okay, I mean, it's
Yeah,
a
we'll have
selling
to-
point nowadays,
Yeah,
you know?
But like I say, the site's stable, and without talking to Mr. Thomas, I'm at somewhat of a loss with regards to what to present, because I'm not too sure how he wants to operate it. So once he gets back and we can coordinate with him, we can certainly get a notice of intent in front of you guys.
I also don't have a problem with increasing the 25 feet, you know, to lay something out where he can go and where he can't go.
Right.
And we can make it 30 feet or 40 feet, or we can make a straight line.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather
Not
than
a
have
bad
that
idea.
curve.
Something that's clear,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
delineation.
you just come in and you stay to the
Sure.
right.
'Cause if you don't have a good buffer zone within the buffer zone.
Sure.
If he's pulling trees out and you're planting them, growing, and I know it's not like every month, but they're gonna have to be there for a year or so.
Right.
But you're still constantly disturbing the soil. So there will be sedimentation, or at least the risk of sedimentation and erosion. So I'd be a little concerned with that. And that's part of the reason why we have to be sensitive to the
Sure.
fertilizers.
Can you show, you can see all the contours. Can you show me which way the pitch is going down? So which way's the flow? I assume it's from the plant down.
Everything's going right to the pool.
It's going right to the pool, right? So it's basically all the contours are running this way.
Correct. I'm at 87 here, and it goes all the way up to, so right here is 99, so.
Yeah. Okay. So if you were trying to control kind of sedimentation, all that, a berm, a shallow berm would do that, right? Because then you would keep it all, and it wouldn't stop absorption. It would act as a filter too, right? I mean,
I would imagine.
at some level.
Oh, I agree with you. And that's something that maybe Scott Morrison could assist on coming up if you're
Yeah.
gonna design a plan. I mean, he knows, you know what we're protecting.
Yep,
And there are lots of different ways to do it, and,
we'll come up with something.
right, we want to be.
What kind of material do you use for that type of berm?
I would suspect it's just dirt. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't
it'd
think
be
it's
a-
any more than just a kind of a regrading to get a high point.
Yeah, like not a sandy loam per se, but you know what I mean, a loam with a decent amount of grit in it would be something I would suggest.
Can't
You
wash
look
it
like a
away.
rock star. What was that?
He's enjoying it. But I think in general, what we're talking about is not, we're not talking about punishment, we're talking about just coming to an agreement as a point, a starting point for future understanding,
Appreciate that. Sure.
right? I mean, we're all on the same
Yes.
page, right? Okay.
Any questions, comments from the public, abutters, citizens, anyone? All right, so this is primarily informational, and we can expect do you want to have another meeting in May?
When's your next meeting?
We're trying to change it from the, what, the
10th to the 17th.
17th?
17th. I'd have to get a notice of intent in by the end of, like, let's shoot for that. I'll shoot for that, have a notice of intent in that we can discuss on the 17th.
Fair enough. All right, so this is actually, this is an enforcement order, so we don't necessarily need your assent, but I think we're in agreement, there's a consensus that we'll readdress this on May 17th.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
I have one question. Between now and then, is it permissible to allow A. Thomas, who are starting to gear up now for the spring, to come back into that field so long as I keep them up towards Hillside Street to the right side? They didn't finish clearing out the dead and the replanting of new stock on the right side.
And it's not anywhere near this, yeah. Is there,
We can stay outside the 100-foot buffer.
What sort of
Oh, if you
equipment,
stay outside the 100-foot, that's great.
what kind of
That's
equipment are
perfect.
they using, do you know? Are they using great big,
I didn't see the operation myself.
It's, I'm not sure. It's not a large, I think maybe a,
backhoe,
maybe a
bobcats?
Bobcat. I think it's a
Bobcat.
Bobcat.
Bobcat and backhoes.
Okay.
I guess, too.
Well, if you can do that
Anything
and
else
stay
is
out
too
of the
big to
100-foot
move.
buffer, then that's easy for us.
Okay.
Okay, I'll see what I can do to get some stakes out there to mark it out,
Like that.
mark that out, and let you guys know when that happens.
Good.
When what
Fair
happens?
enough.
And we get that staked out for you.
Oh, okay, all right.
So, but for John's use and for, Thomas's
Right, but I'd
use.
say if you stay out of the 100 feet,
Right.
then
Exactly.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great.
Sounds like a consensus. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Kathy, did you send us an enforcement order? We never received one.
I sent it to A. Thomas.
Oh, that's why. Okay,
Speaking with Barbara. for the whole
Okay.
thing, that's why.
all right, thanks.
Sorry, I dropped the ball on that one, sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda is an informational item, and that is 1672 Canton Avenue.
Kathy, you want the?
Kathy, do you know anything about 1672 Canton Avenue? Oh, here you are. All right. Good timing, sir.
Kathy, do you have the plan?
Yes, I do.
Good evening, welcome. Would you introduce yourselves, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ned Corcoran, and I'm joined by Jack Dawley, who's the principal of Northland Residential Corporation out of Burlington, Mass. They're the entity that is developing the St. Pius Rectory property on Brush Hill Road. And they have the Carberry property at the end of Canton Avenue under agreement. And we're making the rounds this week, Planning Board, Selectmen, Conservation Commission, to present preliminarily the concept plan that we're working on, and as part of a broader public dialogue. There are some wetland issues on the property, not significant, but there are some wetland issues, so the commission will have some jurisdiction over the development, so we thought it would be a good idea to come and present and discuss
Thank you.
preliminarily what we're doing. So with that, I'll introduce Jack, and then Jack can introduce the concept.
Good evening, and thank you for having Ned and myself here tonight. My name is Jack Dawley and I represent and own a company called Northland Residential Corporation based in Burlington, Massachusetts. Northland is a developer of residential property throughout New England, and having worked up and down 128 throughout Maine and New Hampshire, the Cape and the Rhode Island markets over the last 45 years. I haven't been there all of them, but I've been there for a lot of them. And as Ned said, I am presently the owner and the developer of the St. Pius property off of Brush Hill Road, which we've named Woodmere at Brush Hill, which is a 36-unit active adult, empty nester, each targeted by design condominium development. While I was in the permitting process of that project, I was introduced to the Carberrys, who own a tract of land off of Canton Ave, which you may or may not be familiar with, and as they put up a portion of their 46 acres for sale in summer of 2014, I believe it was. Conversations ensued among my firm, led by myself and the Carberrys, and others with the Carberrys, about their asset. Mr. Carberry's been on the property for many, many years. He has various siblings that live up on the property, and he is in his 80s and wants to monetize his assets while he can. The original offering that they brought to the market was a 17 and change portion of the property that included what I refer to as the manor house, and did not include the balance of the property known as Casey Farm. However, they made it known that they were interested in selling everything. So we made an offer in the summer of 2014, and it was rejected, and primarily because they didn't really know if they wanted to sell everything or not sell everything. There wasn't a number issue. It was, do I want to stay or do I want to go? Do I want to stay in part? Do I want to go in whole or in part? So the conversation, we kept sort of coming back and then leaving and coming back and leaving. And we ultimately reached an agreement with them last Thanksgiving, wherein I would purchase the entire property and subject to certain permits and entitlements that I would pursue. And since then, Ned and I have gone through a due diligence process, both physically, what is the land, legally, what is the title, and begun a series of conversations with what I'd like to consider key stakeholders around the property and within town on the use of the property. It will not stay as it is forever unless it's bought by a conservation organization, which did not step up as yet. And so we've tried to develop a plan that we think is contextually appropriate for the property, its neighborhood, the surroundings, and the town, and that we think it would be what would arguably, in my humble opinion, be the highest and best use for the property. So with that in mind, I'll jump into this printed PowerPoint presentation. The Carberry property is also known as the Walcott Estate, as it back in the day was the property of Governor Walcott, the 39th governor of our state in the late 1800s. And so we've come to name it by its historical name as opposed to its current name. My company was founded in 1970. We're presently located in Burlington. We believe that we have a 45-plus year legacy of creating what we think are tastefully done residential communities throughout New England, whether they be condominium developments, single-family subdivisions, lake or oceanfront subdivisions up north. We take great pride and time to try to integrate a development plan into the land while preserving as much of what we all come to think is valuable for a piece of land like the Walcott Estate. We've developed in Wellesley, Weston, Sudbury, Wayland, Belmont, and certainly throughout northern New England. I own the company. I have about 38 people that work for me. I do almost all of the entitlement work with or without a local attorney. I think it's important for me, the developer, to stand up in front of everyone and represent the firm and what it is we would like to do with the property. So moving on from Northland, the Walcott Estate is 46 acres. It has 1,600 feet of frontage along Canton Ave. It has 3 existing curb cuts out onto Canton Ave, which is a scenic road. In its sort of global fashion, it consists of 5 discrete parcels, although if you look at the tax map, there are many parcels as it was subdivided in the late 80s as a, I don't know, 30 or 40 lot subdivision of 1 acre lots when there was a move to downgrade zoning from 1 acre lots to 2 acre lots. There are numerous buildings throughout the property, 8 residents, various outbuildings. The property consists of woodland areas, open fields. It does have an intermittent stream. It does have historic significance in that it was the former Governor Roger Walcott Estate, and it does abut the Blue Hill Reservation.
I just jump in quickly on the issue of the subdivision. The town changed zoning in the late 80s for portions of the town from single A to double A. They created a subdivision to lock in the zoning at single A, but lost it because they never moved forward into development. So it's now, as of right, zoning would be double A.
The next slide is a slide really tries to depict the existing conditions and the contextual surroundings of where this piece of property is. Fuller Village on the top left. We have the Carberry Lane subdivision to the northeast, Blue Hills to the southwest, and wrapping around to the west.
What do you know about the dam?
What do I know about the dam?
Yeah.
I know that there was well, the dam is not a dam anymore, although, the structure is there, the boards have been taken out. There's an intermittent stream runs down through, I'll call it a pond, but it was really a dammed area to wash horses back in the day. And it is just to the left of the box that says guest cottage. What do I know about it?
Well, we have a history with it, that's why. I didn't know if you were aware of it.
Yes, I am.
Because the folks in Carberry Lane, maybe 10 years ago, it became an issue.
Right.
It's probably 2006,
I'm aware of that.
somewhere around there, okay.
Right. Where the boards were taking out, I guess, as I understand it, it was dammed and then undammed, and when it was undammed, it created some downstream problems.
That's correct. And just so you know, history, we're very sensitive to applicants that come in and call things an intermittent stream. We'll hold your burden of proof on that, because I don't know whether or not this is, blue line on the USGS survey maps or not. But we always look very carefully at whether something is an intermittent stream or a perennial stream. Everybody comes in and says it's an intermittent. Everyone, no exceptions. So we always look very carefully at that aspect of it. Sure.
Understood. I think it's a fair point. So the existing conditions of the various buildings that you can see here, the 3 driveways that front out on to Canton Ave, the Manor House, which is the big house that most of us can see from Canton Ave, and then the balance of the houses, including the Walcott, Governor Walcott Mansion up in the back left corner. The stream, intermittent or perennial, does run down through the property. You can kind of see the topography lines where there's a pinch just above the line called Carberry Trail. You can kind of follow that down. It goes through the dam area and then exits down through the Carberry Lane subdivision. Next slide or page is a series of pictures representing the various houses, the Manor House, Casey Farmhouse, the Walcott House, and then the various other buildings that are located throughout the property. Next slide is titled Site Features. There is a an area where water runs downhill from the Blue Hill Reservation through the property that has been, as it is called here, channelized with hard stone walls on either side for most, if not all, of its coursing. That is probably about as wide as the table that I'm sitting at presently. This picture was taken in the fall and shows it at the present time full of leaves, possibly covering running water, but possibly not. The Manor House lawn with what we think are the signature trees that are scattered within the lawn, and then a series of farm walls and open fields, which is this sort of panoramic photo down on the bottom. Another way to look at it, sorry, in my page this ended up in down, so I apologize for that. I'm not sure why, but this is an aerial photo that is instructive. It was very instructive for us because it allows us to look at the property and see how the property, what it is comprised of. It's comprised of a series of buildings, a series of roads and driveways, but most importantly, some very valuable open fields, lawn areas, clusters of dense trees, clusters of not-so-dense trees.
One of the things to just point out quickly is that the red outline is not centered properly, so,
Yeah.
Do you know where, I'm just kind of reaching back into history, but it's probably 80s. Ken sold a conservation easement to the MDC.
taking made at the end of the 80s, early 90s by the MDC.
MDC,
It
right.
took all of what, the upper area, if you go back to the,
Can you see it on this?
If you go
map
to
that-
this map,
Okay.
you'll see an orange line above the Carberry Lane subdivision, and then it sort of goes off the page
that's the,
Okay.
and comes down to the right of the little Blue Hill box.
Oh, one second.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that. Could you just say it one more time?
it's all of this,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
all of this orange area
Oh,
above what's site property
Uh-huh.
and the Carberry Lane subdivision.
uh-huh.
In the, I think it was 90 or 91, DCR, then MDC,
Right.
made a taking of that property from the Carberries for conservation purposes. It was, the value was disputed, and there was ultimately a settlement.
A lot of money.
It was a lot of money.
Sure was.
$3.4 million.
Right. Remember,
So, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly where I was.
Ten.
So, before we dive into prospective uses of the property, there is a portion of the property that is identified on the state map, the natural heritage for endangered species and the like, that encroaches upon the property, what's the best way, along its rear boundary with the DCR. I don't have it described here. It's along the rear boundary with the DCR, predominantly, if I use this map, predominantly down in the lower corner. We have submitted a request to them as of a week or 2 weeks ago as to what that mapping indicates might be there, and that is pending. However, as the plan is presently constructed, we do not propose any activity within the mapping as we understand it at present. That is something we're aware of, and we're working on to identify what species, whether it be an animal or a plant, has been denoted as a potential endangered species feature, where it is.
Maybe it's rattlesnakes. Could be.
I beg your pardon?
Could be rattlesnakes in that area.
We've heard that that is possibly.
Possibility.
It's either a plant or it's a rattlesnake, in all probability, based upon the preliminary work that we've done. So as we look at the property, that we've looked at it through a couple of different lenses, but the first place that we'll start is the underlying zoning that exists in this area. The underlying zoning for this section of Milton is 2-acre zoning, 80,000 square foot lots with 200 feet of frontage. And that is what most people might call an as-of-right land use. It's a prescribed land use that if you can demonstrate through appropriate engineering that you can create parcels of land of 80,000 square feet in size and 200 feet of frontage or more along a subdivision road that is compliant with subdivision regulations, that it is a definitive subdivision and approvable. So we did a proof plan or a yield plan to try to understand what that might look like and how many lots that might be. In its crudest fashion, you can take 46 acres, multiply it by 43,560 square feet an acre, and then divide that by 80. That yields a round number of 25 lots. But then you geometrically have to apply all of these. This plan that I have on, it's labeled sheet 11 on the right, represents a schematic or conceptual definitive subdivision land use plan for the property. It does not attempt to respect the buildings that are there. It does not attempt to respect the fields or open areas, but it yields somewhere around 20 to 23 lots. The road that is sketched out on here meets the subdivision regulations as it relates to width and radii and slope and the things of that nature. It would necessitate some sort of water crossing, whether it be an intermittent stream or other, in at least one location. The soils on the property are sufficient to support septic systems. So each lot would be supported by a septic system that would be suitable for a 4 to 5 bedroom, single-family house.
How far does the sewer line go up? We just did that at
Yeah,
Apple Lane.
it's north of there, isn't it?
It's
north.
there at Apple Lane, so it goes up to Atherton.
Yeah,
Closest point of sewer connection is at Brush Hill and Blue Hill Avenue.
okay.
So
From that
part of the
area.
plan would be to bring sewer up the hill, turn the corner, and connect here. It's quite a ways
Yeah, okay.
back up Campton Avenue. One of the reasons why this area was zoned as double A was because it was not served by sewer.
Okay.
So in my professional judgment, while this is a permittable use of the land, it is not the highest and best use of the land. And I say that because the land has a number of amenity values that we all see as we go by this property. And if you get on the property, you really can come to appreciate are very valuable and very important to try to retain. It does these things that we see when we drive by the property on Canton Ave, and the Manor Field with the big trees in the middle of it, the vista up KC Farm driveway into what we have nicknamed the KC Farm Field, the substantial stone walls along Canton Ave, and the sort of, I'll call it ragged frontage there that provides an opaque view into the property, really set a stage here that I think we all like. And imposing a land use plan through a definitive traditional subdivision paradigm doesn't preserve that.
Blows it up.
It blows it up. So what I was taught at Northland by the guy that hired me 30-odd years ago is it starts with the land. It doesn't start with the zoning bylaw. It starts with the land. What is it about the land that has compelled you to the land. So we looked at, the land aerially, we looked at the land on the face of the earth, and I go back to your aerial map, this is slide 10, and the elements that we think are most important to preserve and to think about are the frontage along Canton Ave, number one. Number two, the open field areas, Canton Ave, the Casey Farm Field. The manor home lawn area that you have this grand vista into and then up to Mr. Carberry's home, which we refer to as the manor home. You spoke about the dam. If we go back another page to the existing conditions plan, this one, you'll note that there is some real topography lines down by the manor house that separate the manor house from the guest cottage. That's an esker. It's a geologic form where the land rises up rather steeply on one side and then crests and falls down on the other side. The stream, whatever it may be, is on one side of it. The Casey Farm Field, Casey Farm, the manor house lawn area is on the other side. That's an area that really says, because of its topography and the tree growth on it, that you shouldn't go in it. It need not be imposed upon. There is an opportunity to provide substantial buffers along all the way around the property to allow the clustering of a new use on the land within the center of the property. So we looked at it from that lens. The last thing we did is we have curb cuts. We have existing curb cuts. They were put in logical places when the property was originally developed, long time ago. And they work. The center curb cut that runs up through the middle of the property provides wonderful access into the property, but also wonderful access out onto Canton Ave, both to the south and north, or whatever directions those are. The driveway that accesses the manor house provides a way in. The driveway that provides access to the Walcott house is another curb cut, but we're not going to, we don't think it is the best curb cut to rely upon. So taking in all of those sort of aspects, we looked at a land use plan that would propose the creation of a condominium ownership form of housing development that was targeted toward active adults through either a design format or an age restriction by deed format, and yields a plan that is described on page 13, which is the one with the green and white lines. This plan calls for the development of 70 new townhomes in either a duplex or triplex configuration, the retention of 3 of the existing buildings, the Manor House, the Walcott House, and the Casey Farmhouse, which would be rehabilitated and reused and house approximately 5 units, for a total unit count on the 46 acres of 75 units. Now, might we end up with 69 new townhomes and 6 homes in existing units or something like that? Yes. Might we end up with 71 and 4? Maybe. But the present plan, schematic plan, is attempting to cluster the majority of the housing units off of Canton Ave, retaining the open fields along Canton Ave, creating a substantial 100 to 150-foot buffer, no-touch buffer along Canton Ave, preserving the geologic esker on the Carberry Lane end of the property and the pond or the dam or whatever it is we'd like to refer to it, and maintaining a buffer along the Carberry Lane side of the property, along the rear, around the side of the property down at the bottom of the page, and then back down to Canton Ave. We're prescribing somewhere order of magnitude 100 or more foot separation from those boundaries. You can see on this plan the line that is the stream that runs down through there. There would be at least 2 crossings contemplated by the roads that are depicted here. We are also suggesting that it would be appropriate to provide a public trail connection to the Carberry path that exists on the DCR land or MDC land to the rear by providing the public with the ability to come up into the property and park somewhere at the top of the property in a limited way, not a Blue Hill parking lot way, but a 3, 4, 5 spaces or something like that, so you could access that to the rear. And this plan calls for a density of 1.6 units to the acre, which is a relatively low townhouse metric. And the shaded out area represents about 50% of the property being preserved as open space. And that open space would be protected with a conservation restriction. We are proposing that it be protected by a conservation restriction that is held by a third party, not the condominium association. The third party could be the Milton
Land Conservation Trust?
Land Conservation Trust.
That's gone, isn't it?
What's that?
Isn't that gone? Hasn't it
No,
all been-
John Cronin,
It's
still
gone.
exists. They own. We've talked to
They
John.
just transferred title a couple of weeks ago. It's gone.
Yep.
Oh, well, whoever the new entity is.
It's the
But-
Plymouth County, that's an issue, because we want people in the town like John Cronin and Peter Jeffries and Ted.
Well, that's new to me. We've been in conversation with John Cronin up through today. And
We just announced it.
well,
Not today, but I
Right,
think
about a
we
month
got.
ago, 6 weeks ago.
No, we-
So you
we
might
all
want to
got
just
emails.
double check.
Yeah. So whatever the appropriate entity is within the town
Right.
to hold that.
No, that's
as
good. I'm
party.
with you 100%. I'm disappointed that it went to a non-town entity.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, that's news to us because we've had some preliminary conversations. It's, this is something that I'm doing in Wellesley presently with the Wellesley Conservation Trust. I've done it in Wayland, I've done it in Sudbury, done it in Carlisle, with local land conservation trusts where they work with us to define a conservation restriction and hold it and be the enforcer for what can or can't happen in those areas. What we've seen happen more recently in the last 5 years is that there's a requirement, there's a need, I won't say a requirement, but to endow that CR with some money, whether it be with an upfront payment or a series of payments in perpetuity that flow out of a condominium association for stuff.
This new entity is called the Wildlands Trust. Wildlands Trust. That's what it's called.
But isn't it based in Plymouth?
I think it is.
Well, okay, so it caught us both a little bit
Yeah.
off guard on that one, because
I spent
Well, I
a
think it's a
half,
great idea.
spent a half hour on the phone with John this morning.
Never mentioned it, huh?
Never mentioned it. It's okay.
It affects land.
I'm sure, and
All over the town.
they know that entity is land all over town.
So the challenge that I have been faced with is the
Yeah.
Carberrys, they took a liking to me and the manner in which we do business. They have some legacy concerns about the property. They've lived on the property for many, many, many years. Their family lives on it in a very large part, and they've been stewards of this land for all these years. At the same time, it's an asset. They want to and intend to monetize that asset at a fair value. This is a significantly valuable piece of land. given where it was. And the approach that I took with them was, I believe that I can pay a fair price for the property while maintaining much of the property in the manner in which you as landowners for 30-plus years have kept it. That resonated. They had other opportunities to sell the property or to partner with other users. I know one of them is similar user than I, and two others were much different than I, and would most likely impose a different kind of land use on it. So the challenge that I think we all have is this property will be sold. It will be developed in some fashion. How can we guide how it is developed in a way that is respectful of the setting that it, of the property in and of itself and the setting in which it is located? And while this is a lot of units, and more than 20 or 22 or 3 units that the definitive subdivision plan might permit, or 31 to 33 or 4 that the cluster bylaw might enable. It does begin to frame a conversation about the preservation of key elements of the property, whether they is buildings, wetland features, or endangered species habitats. It is not the final plan. It is, but it is the final number. I mean, I did not come to the number with a pocket full of change to, you know, so that we go from 75 to 35. Likewise, I don't come to the table proposing, you know, 150 or something like that. I come to the table having looked at the property very carefully and tried to impose a development plan on the property that generates sufficient value to compel a landowner to do business with me in a manner that I think is fair and reasonable. So we are beginning a conversation with stakeholders. We've met with the neighbors individually and as a group, and we'll continue to do so. We've met with the selectmen and planning board folks. And we would hope that we could collaboratively with all of the town's boards and stakeholders in the local community craft a plan that satisfies as many, if not all, of the concerns that are brought to bear.
Very nice presentation. Very interesting development plan and this beautiful land.
Is magnificent. The goal is to be before town meeting in October. The zoning change that would essentially adopt the Quistit Brook zoning, which is the attached cluster. It actually equates to the same density, almost to the unit. That Quistit Brook is 56 units on 32 acres. It's 1.7 units to the acre. This plan at 75 units would have a 10% affordability component. The selectman asked us last night whether that could be grossed up to, well, like a 15%, require a few additional units to account for an adjustment to the affordability. But that's the goal is to apply that. That is the least dense of sort of the 4 or 5 multi-family condominium type developments. Quistit Brook, Home Inc., which is 98 units on 37 acres, 2.6 units to the acre. They're across the street from each other. You don't even know either one of them is there. There's no traffic impact. They're not occupied by children, young families. There's none of that come and go. Similarly, even Fuller Village, which is 319 units on 64 acres, there's no traffic. Most of the people own cars, but there's no traffic. So, we're looking carefully at that. We know that traffic at that end of Canton Avenue is an issue. But, you know, I think Jack, I can say it maybe a little more directly than he would be willing to say, is that the competition for the land are the 40B developers. And Jack's been offered more for a portion of the land than he's offered to pay for the entirety of the land. The plan for that portion of the land would be 300 rental units. Jack's, that's not Jack, it's not what he does, it's not who he is. 75 units is the right count. His alternative would be to gross it up to account for a 25% affordability, similar product, more dense. If he had to, we're trying to avoid that process, but that's really the choice that the town at the end of the day will have. But we think that, at least I think, and the experience that I've had with Jack now, this is the second development we've come through in Milton, is that he is sensitive, he is careful, he pays attention, he doesn't overdo, he does what he thinks is right for the land, for the neighborhood, for the development, for the town. And I think, you know, we'll look forward to working more specifically with you on wetland and related issues as we move forward down the road. So,
On that score, I have retained, the week before last, I retained a wetland biologist, Don Holmes or someone, who will be walking the property, flagging the resources, the wetland jurisdictional resources, if I can use that phrase, for the purposes of filing an ANRAD with the commission, probably within, I would say, by month end, so that we all know whether we're dealing with what wetland issues, intermittent, perennial, or other water-related matters in jurisdiction. And like I said, we've put a notice, information request into NH.
National Heritage.
EPS, yeah, whatever
That's
they're
right.
called.
Well, I think when you use the term stakeholders, I think all of us in Milton, in some ways, are stakeholders to this beautiful property, because as you come into town, everyone says, oh, isn't this a beautiful town? So we all benefit from how the Carberrys have maintained this property and preserved it, and they're to be commended for that. So I'm happy to see there's a possibility of keeping this open space, and certainly looking to see what animals and what trees are here, other features that need to be preserved, and that the Carberrys are open to that, the importance of it. So I think it's a good beginning. I think it is a good beginning.
Any questions, thoughts? Any abutters, members of the public that would like to ask a question or be heard?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. My name's Hale Smith.
Hale, why don't you come forward and you can really be heard.
They're all on.
My name's Hale Smith. I'm a longtime resident at 1632 Canton Avenue and am a direct abutter to the Carberry property. Mr. Dolly and Mr. Corcoran were kind enough to meet with my wife and I about a month ago, and I think approximately 10 days ago they actually held a meeting for the neighborhood, which was really sort of the first time the neighborhood had a chance to understand this project and understand its scope. The neighborhood as a group met for the first time last night, so we are just beginning to get involved in this project and really do want to work with Northland Development as much as possible to make this the best project it can be for the town and for the neighborhood. As the commission undoubtedly understands, this is an extraordinary piece of property. It's right at the foot of Big Blue. The MDC took 30 acres by eminent domain, 15, 20 years ago, because it's so sensitive, because it's so important. And I can't speak for the neighbors. I can speak for myself that I do have concerns about the density. This is the proposal would triple the allowable density under current zoning. And I have actually requested that Mr. Dolly do a detailed analysis of cluster zoning, which he has not done yet. He's only done the traditional double acre zoning. So we would love to see the commission look carefully at this and help make this the best project it could be for the town.
Let me ask you a question. What do you think about the public access to the Carberry Trail that's been proposed? It's just in concept.
Yeah. I think it's not entirely necessary, given that Trailside Museum is there with huge parking facilities. It's literally feet from that parking lot. So, but it's it's not a to the extent that it's a public benefit, I certainly wouldn't be against it.
Because the Blue Hills are being used so much now. I mean, in the last 30 years, the numbers of people who hike the Blue Hills has quadrupled. It's wonderful, but there is demand to use the property, in
Right.
fact,
Right.
That request was made by someone at the community meeting with affordability. Thought that at least for those that are in close proximity to the property, being able to grab the dog and walk up the hill. So that was the genesis of it.
Yeah.
It's interesting, we have a lot of push-pull on trails. Wellesley's bylaw that I'm presently working on has a requirement for trails. Every abutter around the perimeter of the development doing that we've proposed is fighting with the planning board to get rid of the trails. And they looked at me and I said, well, the criteria is to provide a trail network to existing trails. And we happen to, on this property in Wellesley, happen to be bound on two sides by a trail network, so we connected the dots and paying price. So, I can go. I don't disagree with the notion of the substantial parking down the street. So I think that's a byproduct of a collaborative discussion with whomever, and taking all that into consideration.
There was also a similar but separate request for consideration for sort of sidewalk-type access along the frontage. There are no sidewalks out there. Canton Avenue is fairly narrow, and one of the questions was whether or not we could think about some sort of a trail inside the stone wall that comes along the frontage of the property. The question is, where does it connect to at either end? But certainly that's something that, is worthy of separate consideration while we're going through this sort of overall site planning process. That also came out of the neighborhood meeting that we had a week and a half ago, or 2 weeks ago.
I think during future meetings of the commission, there will be a lot more neighborhood participation.
That's a good thing. That's good. And this is a good start. We appreciate the informational approach and spread the word. I think that's a good idea.
Thank you for
the
time.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
My name is David Kelman. I live at 9.
Can you come closer so you can use the mic?
I take this?
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Kelman. I live at 9 Crown Street. And just a thought, I know it's right next to what used to be Eustis Estate that's been taken over by Historic New England. I'm not sure, do the two properties abut? They don't abut?
No, they're half a mile
I
apart.
know they're close by, I just wasn't sure.
No, all of Carberry Lane plus the Bartol Estate is between them.
Okay,
Fair
I
amount
just need to clarify it, because it's just find it interesting that you've got essentially two big estates, that the eventual use is going to be somewhat different. And I just was trying to figure it out if there's some sort of connection between them in terms of possibly the trail, and if memory serves me correctly, Historic New England does have a number of easements, but I think more of a historic nature rather than conservation. And I just was trying to see if there was going to be some sort of tie-in between the two properties.
I think aren't the cooperative farms on the Eustis estate? I
Yeah,
think they're going to
think-
maintain that.
I heard that, I could be wrong, but I think Brookwood Farm is going to be renting 1 or 2 acres, and I think Eustis Estate is what, 90 some
I think so.
90 some acres, so I thought there might be some sort of tie in that way. And I know that Historic New England deals more with historic properties and historic easements rather than conservation easements. And I just thought that, granted, it's ideal that you have a town-owned entity that actually holds the conservation easements. And obviously, for obvious reasons, I can't speak for Historic New England. But essentially, since they do deal with historic easements on their properties, they might be somehow tie in the two entities. Just a thought, especially when the buildings on Carberry Estate do have historic value as well.
They do indeed.
It just a thought. And are they on the Carberry property? Says the National Register. Are they a National Register at this point, or are they?
They are not.
Okay.
No, they're, they're certainly historic under the town's historic preservation bylaw, and we've met with the Historical Commission as well, and their input on how to at least address the development of the existing, of those buildings will be significant and important.
And with the redevelopment of the buildings in the Carberry Estate, are the redevelopment going to be sensitive in terms of the historic nature and try to at least keep some of the outside fabric and hopefully some of the inside fabric of the building to mirror the historic nature of it?
Yes. That we were asked that question last night by the Historic Commission. I'd say yes quickly, but I have to caveat it with the one proviso that if I have to increase the size of a window for egress, current code purposes, which is traditionally the one thing that we encounter, that a window is too small, that it might have to be modified if it's a bedroom. But at this juncture, the intent is to rehabilitate the buildings in their present condition and reuse them, to the greatest degree possible as is. For instance, in the Manor House, the first floor of the Manor House has a beautiful series of parlors, living rooms, dining rooms, and a stairway and woodwork and such, which is quite grand. And one of the thoughts that we have developed, or have in our head anyway, is can the first floor of the Manor House serve as some form of limited common room or gathering area? Because breaking up that one floor would really erode the fabric and the historic, sort of pedigree of that room. Up in the, all the dormers and so on and so forth, we can create, I'm going to use the word apartments, not because I imply rental, that I imply smaller. Up on the second floor where you could get 1 or 2 or 3 sort of more modest sized residences. That's probably a better word to use.
And I know the other property that you're redeveloping, I think it's a monastery.
Yes,
The-
rectory, yeah.
Yeah, is it the rectory that seems to be geared more to an older essentially empty nesters. Are you anticipating the same type of population to live at the Carberry Estate, or are you looking for a different group of people?
We're looking for baby boomers, active adults, 50-plus years or older. We like to do age targeted by design. What does that mean? First floor master bedroom, 1 or 2 bedrooms on the second floor, 2-car garage, in a condominium form of ownership, as opposed to a fee simple lot ownership. which is really a homeownership model that is more suitable to families. I am open to a conversation about a age-restricted community where each home is age-restricted to a population of 55 years or older, which essentially eliminates young school kids. I've done probably 1,000 age-targeted by design units in my career, and I can say with a straight face they don't generate kids.
Understood.
They generate. You might have a high school kid or a college kid that's sort of hanging around, but you don't have babies.
And you're talking.
Not that we don't like babies or kids, but,
Well, you might have babies.
Yeah, there's some-
It depends on the composition of the family unit.
There's some college age people that are still kids also, but that's another story. But also you're talking 70, give or take, units. Anyway, how about the affordability?
We're proposing a 10% affordability on those 75 units, so 7.5 rounded up to 8 would be 8 affordable units. Excuse me?
I just have my comment is that we're straying from conservation
yeah.
issues.
Okay, I was
We have
just-
a
okay.
limited jurisdiction. It's
Okay.
important.
Thank you for your time.
Just asking.
Okay. No, I didn't mean to cut
Other
anybody
people
off.
might
There's
We
some other-
want to
can have the conversation in the hall, and you can take care of jurisdictional related matters.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Others that would like to make a comment or ask a question? Hearing none, we appreciate very much your presence and your educational effort.
Thank
We'll
you.
get you an ANRAD filing shortly.
Fair enough.
Thank you for
you
your
very
time.
much.
thank you.
Next on the agenda is informational also, and that is the Friends of Pope's Pond. Hi, good evening.
I haven't done much of this before, so you'll have to kind of bear with me a little bit.
All right.
Joe's got a little map for you there.
I was wondering who you friends of Pope's Pond were. It was unsigned. Who was?
Unsigned, that's terrible.
Well, my name's William Brockhoff. I live at 73 Dexter Street. New here, new in Milton. Moved in July and August. One of the main reasons I bought the house that I bought was because of that pond and the conservation area around it. Walked down there before I wrote the offer, actually, and then decided that was where I wanted to be, so I could walk my dog and go down there with my 10-year-old daughter.
It's upside down.
I quickly talked to a lot of the other neighbors around there as I was taking some walks, and got some agreement that, the pond area was wonderful. We all value it very highly, but that it could use a little love.
Yeah.
And so that's where Friends of Pope's Pond came about. Everybody was sort of in agreement online and offline in terms of that point, and so I thought that maybe we could start talking about it more formally. The document that you all have there in front of you came about based on a walk that Tom and I did through the area to sort of pinpoint some of the more prominent things that were standing out to us as issues. And then we had a meeting with a larger group of neighbors and came up with that document. So we'd like to suggest a walkthrough with all of you, or some of you, at some point, if you'd be open to that. It's difficult to get a sense of what we're talking about from just looking at photos that we've photocopied, but it'll be quite evident if you walk on the property. Our goal is to preserve it as a wild and undeveloped, natural spot, but maintaining it at the same time for the purpose of walking trails and the waterways and such. Some pieces that we'd specifically like to focus on during the walk would be the boundary. As you can see, The boundaries are fairly linear with the abutters, on the map anyway. But if you walk the trails on the east and west side of the pond, which you can see better, I've dotted them on the little map that you have in front of you as opposed to the one up there that has no trails indicated. And the boundary has become kind of fuzzy. If you, it's especially easy to see on the east side of the pond where the trail comes very close between the pond and the abutters. Some have fences, some don't, but that line is definitely not as straight as it is on that map. And I think that's just a natural thing that happens over time as people are trying to take care of their yard and fight back different things. I don't think anything was, malicious. But in addition, various abutters are probably in good faith trying to maintain the woods near their home, and everybody's got a different idea of how to do that.
You're very kind, very kind.
In some cases, there's been some pretty significant clear cutting. In the pictures you see there, you can see broad swaths that are, maybe you could drive a large truck through them. There's areas where people have clear cut and then just laid huge piles of downed trees and debris, yard waste, Christmas tree, that kind of thing. Just plopped it right there. So there's places where the downfall in the conservation area is quite natural looking. The trees just fall where they will and such. But then there's places where there's huge brush piles. So I think that one of the things we'd like to ask is that we could help reestablish the boundary of the conservation area. Whether that's a survey, I'm not sure exactly, but it seems like it would be helpful for everybody involved to reestablish the boundary of the conservation area. And then we'd like to get some help creating maybe like some sort of a memorandum of understanding or a document that could then go out to the abutters, explaining maybe best practices or policies of some sort. Again, I'm new to this, so open to suggestion.
I have a question
Yeah.
for you, and it's not, it's going to sound like a political question, and it's not, but at a recent town meeting, there was a proposal for a development at where the old ice house was.
Mm-hmm.
And as
Comes up a
part of
lot.
that, a lot of what you said was suggested by the developer, the McKean Group. And part of it was in this area here to make public access. And we're interested in public access to
Sure.
resources, and this is a real resource. So if you looked at this area, what they're talking about is actually running trails in this direction. And I know exactly what you're talking about, because some of these folks might not be real happy about that. But it seems like there's got to be some mechanism for getting people to see the resource that it is, and you pointed that out. But do you have any ideas of pathways? One of the issues that came up, and we had a hand in it, because this land here is owned by the Conservation. That's the Conservation Commission, that's the town. And then the Conservation Commission actually has a deed to this land here. So, I mean, you're striking a chord with us. I mean, this is good news. We've got people interested. One of the things that came up in the discussion about the development of having a store and a bank or something here was that there are a lot of kids that come from this area and cut across here. Does that factor into your thought process here in terms of, are the trails for people, giving access to the school, which is a great idea to have the kids walk through there, but do they, and is that part of your thought process?
Well, just to be clear, the trail, let me just show you. The existing trail comes off of the Lafayette Circle, I think it's called. And right up along here, and then there's a bridge crossing. Right. And then there's a proper trail that comes all the way out to the road here. And then there is a trail that, a rough trail.
Sort of goes that way, right.
That comes down to here.
Can you hold on a second?
We're good.
And then there's, I think the trail that you were discussing that the developer had proposed from the rendering I saw anyway, was more, almost directly to the bridge, the existing bridge. Yeah.
That's correct.
So there's some evidence of partying, some nocturnal activities over in this area, quite, in quite a secluded section of it.
Right.
And I think that's partially due to the fact, this is one man's opinion, that the trail doesn't have any way to exit out here. There's not a circuit. And so people can come down in here and kind of hide.
Right.
So that's the
Isn't
existing
there actually an exit, and Tom, you probably know this, but my memory is that there is actually a deeded exit right here.
The
I don't think
land,
anybody knows about it.
you see, there's a series of
Tom, why
properties.
don't you identify yourself? You just,
There's a series of properties.
no, that was an identification. Say
Oh,
who
I'm
you are.
sorry.
Well, who are you?
Yeah, I'm Tom Palmer. I'm a member of these friends who just got together. I'm a town meeting member, Precinct 1. I live on Blue Hill Terrace Street. I'm very familiar with this area, and it's funny to hear William say, it sold me on living here, because it did the same for me. I walked down Lafayette Street when we were looking at houses, and I saw a snake, and I said, this place is okay for me. At any rate, if you try to go down that east side of the pond, you see there's one property down near Canton Ave that reaches out nearly to the brook. It's got a triangular extension.
Yeah.
If you try to walk through there, you get to a point where there's a broad ditch paralleling the stream on the east side that may have been a former course of the stream that for some reason got emptied out and it was diverted. But you have to hop that and go over an old rickety wooden humped bridge that's falling apart. That's both at the very last property, which has been empty for quite a while. The house there at the corner of Canton Ave, apparently there's a dispute about who's going to pay for mold. That's what I heard. At any rate, nobody's been in there for quite a while. So people have taken to walking through there and walking along the pond. But ultimately, we recognize that in order to get through at that end and avoid that triangular property, it might be necessary to have a bridge across a brook, although we would like to be able to walk through right to Canton Ave. So that's the sort of issue we're looking at down at that end. Is that your question, John?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Because I was kind of hung up that nobody knows that, I think we own the land, we, the Conservation
Yes.
Commission, all the way to Canton Ave.
Yes, there is a piece, but it gets very narrow at one point. So it might be that the trail would really be squeezed there. I think that's one of the questions we would like to look at is, can we get through that way?
It gets very rough.
Or,
It's very overgrown, isn't it?
or,
Lots of
or
invasive-
if indeed the Conservation Commission does own the southern tip and has exit to it, perhaps, as Will suggested, perhaps we could sort of help make it a little bit clearer. So if I or other members of the community want to walk through, it would be a possibility for us to have some sort of marked trail if you want to walk through there, because I know if you, on the north part of the brook, I have seen, there is a bridge there, and I've seen people walk on through the north side from one end to the other, and I think to afford the opportunity that people could walk the southern part of it as well.
No, I think it's a good idea. And one of the things, and this is going to sound like a kind of a bureaucratic response. One of the problems we have is that we don't have any money. And we don't have staff. Kathy does wonderful work, but essentially her time and resources are devoted to the DPW. We have, I think, 20% of Kathy, and she probably devotes 50% of her time to us, not 20%. We need help, and actually the help comes from people like yourself.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I know they still have community service for the high school kids. And I'm embarrassed that we don't take advantage of that. And because the first thing that needs to be done is to clean it. And I
We
think
knew right
that-
out of the gate that, not to interrupt you, but we knew right out of the gate that finances were gonna be an issue. So, we've been brainstorming a lot of creative ideas. We just basically need to get a plan in place and then permission to start a process.
And I know that in Friends of the Blue Hill, they have volunteer people to help maintain the trails. And I know Franklin Park, in Boston, have the same type of people that help maintain the park. So I think if we can get enough interest of the people in the community to help either have 2 or 3 times a year to help clean up the brush. I know that we have a couple of pictures of some trees that have fallen over the trails, to have maybe 2 or 3 days a year to have volunteers help clean up major issues, or perhaps, and some other days to help some minor cleanup type days. I think it could make a huge difference. And I think that Will's idea of having some sort of site visit to the Conservation Commission, as well as members of the community, really to look at the pond to see where we're now, and perhaps have some sort of discussion in terms of this is where it is now and what we'd like to see 2 or 3 years down the road.
Excuse me for just a second, it seems like the top 3 priorities to start with, and the reason that a site visit might be necessary are the crossing points,
Right.
the 3 crossing points, and establishing a boundary and creating an understanding with the abutters, because that kind of has to be, we feel like that kind of has to be dealt with first and foremost, yeah. And then finally, the banks of the Pine Tree Brook, both above and below on both ends of the pond, are overgrown really extensively, to where they're at the north end, for instance, the brush is almost touching in the middle of the pond, and we're concerned about flood issues. It's like a colander for trash at this point too, you know. So that's where we'd like to start.
So the first question I think is out there, would we do a site visit? And the answer is yes. We do, site inspections every month. And this would be a top priority for us. I think it's a good idea. So that's a yes. The second, just in terms of my response, we need to we may not be able to come up with money, but we can come up with people. And I don't mean to, lean on Mary Gormley, the superintendent, but she's great at organizing things. And I really think there are an awful lot of high school kids there that need their service. Their service out. I think is it 75 hours that they've got to do over 4 years. So there's a workforce out there. And there are other organizations too. We had somebody come in, I don't know if it's still there, but I think there's a bench somewhere around here, because we had an Eagle Scout come in. This is about, 10 or 12 years ago. And so some of the scouts have projects. And we've had scouts come in, Eagle Scouts say, listen, this is my project. I want to put a canoe launch next to the Neponset River. So we could find, that kind of organization that might be able to devote people and ideas, and creative ideas. But I'd leave that, you can spot some of these people and organizations.
Yes.
I mean, you get the Friends of the Blue Hills that you rounded up pretty quickly.
Yep. If I may, my name is Joe Sloan. I live on Concord Avenue. First off, I wanted to say how impressed I was that Will made some phone calls when he had this idea, because he keeps telling me over and over again, I'm new to this, I'm new to Milton, and I think that to come into town and come into the neighborhood and choose something like this as something that you want to put your energies and attention to is just amazing. It's just commendable, and started asking around, and when he called me, he had called Tom, I think right about the same time. I was instantly attracted to the idea, and suggested, again, as you said, that the town isn't going to have any budget to be able to put forward to this. So to think, from my perspective as a volunteer in the Blue Hills and with the New England Mountain Bike Association and with the DCR, I've worked on trail building and trail maintenance efforts since the mid-1970s, all over Greater Boston, projects large and small. And what I offered to Will was, in fact, this support that you describe. There's some very professional support. The New England Mountain Bike Association, in fact, runs trail building workshops for the DCR, so there's tremendous talent out there. But I think back to this idea of a site walk, looking at the existing conditions, I think what I have suggested is looking at, from your perspective, what things that you would be able to permit a group of volunteers to do, and then what other things would rise to the threshold of needing a little more thought in terms of basic maintenance versus things that specifically needs to be permitted. There are a tremendous number of wet spots that could be dealt with in a number of different ways, and I think a site walk would be great to be able to point out some possible solutions and have you say, that would be something that we would let you go ahead with. This would be something that we would need to think about a little bit
Good
more.
idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Yep.
Saturday.
I can't do it this Saturday. End of the month, a little
I
bit
can't
more?
either.
Okay.
Going camping.
Is the Ice House coming on the May agenda?
I don't know.
How about the 30th?
No, you're right, that, if we could time it, if that's true, if they're coming back on the 17th, we're gonna have a site visit anyway. I'm not even sure what that is.
The Saturday after the 17th, or?
No, I'm with the Ice
I'm
House.
just saying, should we do both together, so then.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
And the,
So that would be the 20th.
community can kind of get a feel from what the needs are with the developer.
Team effort.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do you follow all that?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that does make sense. And one of the things that, and this is a great map to have, but when we go out there, it's probably a good idea to take some of these, maybe Alan Bishop could help us get some of the property lines here so we get a better sense of what the distances are.
In fact,
He does everything.
I purchased it from Alan. I bought it from Alan, so
Yeah.
that's DPW.
Oh,
map.
he's like a miracle guy.
Right on
He
top,
creates stuff.
right on top of it.
But if we had some, like handouts that would give us a little bit better perspective of this. I know you can read it with your eyes closed, Michael, but I need to have, like a good legend so I can figure out how many feet is that?
Okay.
So that we have a better sense if we're standing here, is this property line being honored or is it not? And the answer is probably not. And there's no need to it unless there's a stated public use for that land. People just say, oh, I get the view of the pond, and God bless them, it's a nice view. But it would be helpful if we could get something.
Yeah.
It would give us a better perspective of distances, so we'd know essentially where their line stops and our line starts.
Okay.
When I say our line, I'm talking about the Conservation Commission land.
I believe if I could butt in, I think we could get the house by, I'm not sure if we could do it for all the houses in the line, but I know that you could go into the building department, and for each street address, it will show their boundaries and how it should jog. And I'm
Right.
assuming when the town.
That's what she can do.
Yeah, I can
That's
do all
exactly.
parcels.
That's-
What,
What
did you
about May
propose it?
21st? That's the Saturday after the 17th. May 21st?
Sure.
23rd.
No, 21st.
Oh, May, I'm sorry, you're talking
May.
about May.
May.
Good for me.
Far enough out that I don't have anything going.
We'll just have to get in touch with you at what time, sidewalk.
We estimated it would probably take an hour to go around the pond. I know you start early, that's all right with us. You often
We
have
stop and
several
talk,
things.
nothing takes us an hour.
Yeah, hopefully there would be enough time so that it's really,
Yeah.
there would be enough time to be able to stop at some of these spots and jot a few notes when some ideas, and then move along to the next spot and jot a few
You're on the
notes.
21st,
Excuse me,
but
do you have
we've
a-
all- we're all on the
I don't think
same
it's
page,
21st
so.
Excuse me, do you have an email address? Does she have?
She does.
She
Yeah,
does,
I can
okay.
give it to you.
Okay, I just want to make sure she had contact point, okay.
Can we table the discussion of when until we have a coordinated effort with the Ice House development?
Sure.
Because it should be,
Sure.
it should be a
Done.
coordinated effort. And also, I think that we should be leaving it as the last thing on the agenda so that it's a relatively open-ended timeframe.
Not rushed,
Because we
yeah.
don't want to be constricted in terms of running out of time and therefore not being able to talk about things that.
Makes a lot of sense.
That's good.
Right.
Tom,
So
what's in the
Fred-
pond? Do we know what's in the pond? Snapping turtles? or-
I talked to, you know, you saw with the Ice House presentation, the pond was much larger, it reached much further to the west. And he said he remembered large bulldozers coming through the pond from his side and pushing up dirt on the far side. Apparently, that's how the pond got smaller. It was dredged, and the dredge spoil made new land on the west side. So there are no original soils in that area, and the pond is rapidly filling up as Pine Tree Brook brings sediment and road sand down from Canton Ave. So eventually, the pond will fill up from that sediment, and if it's going to be maintained for an amenity, it will probably have to be dredged at some point. Another thing we talked about is the little dam at the mouth of the pond, is that a barrier to fish passage? Because I would suggest if it is, be talked about removing it or amending it somehow. And I asked my boss at Neponset, Ian Cook, is a dam that low? I think it's only a foot or so. Is that a barrier? He said yes. I have seen guys fishing there, particularly in the spring when the bullheads are edible. You'll often see a guy come down Lafayette in a van with fish with dough balls. And there's quite a lot of insect life, and there's lots of big bullfrogs. And in that little field that's on the west side of the pond, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's a very nice meadow with a sandy soil. That is filling in with brush over time. We kind of like that field and would like it to stay open. That's another maintenance issue, but late in the season, a lot of little orchids come up there called sporanthes or lady's tresses. It's really quite pretty. They're very small. But to me, it has a lot of value, even though it's disturbed. And I would say, as you go downstream on the left bank, that is all original soils. That maple swamp, that has never been disturbed. That's a more natural area. Because the muck soils are so soft, the trees will often blow down, but they do get quite large there. It's very nice to walk under there late in the year when it dries out. There are many invasive species, plants all through the area, particularly around the trails, and that's something we'd like to address and we can see when we go out there. I'd just like to make one comment about Ice House. When we toured it, if you're standing at the east side of the dam across the mouth of the brook, you can kind of look under a little grove of apple trees and see through to the Ice House. But the Ice House, the whole property is built up on fill. And particularly on the north side, that fill has encroached quite a bit onto your property and the town's property there. There's a big lens where the building is right on the property line, but there's boats and trucks and so forth. All,
We're aware of that.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, to me, that's something that ought to be addressed if,
Yes.
if development takes place there. We kind of agreed that, yes, a trail could go through to the Ice House and then out to Blue Hill Parkway, but we thought in general that we like the natural feel of the whole area, so we're not looking to turn it into something like Turner's Pond, a more intensively used type, with lots of lawns and so forth.
Different character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and you will see when you get there what the feel of it is. So when we talk about paths, we're generally talking about footpaths. We're not talking about paved multi-use paths and things like that. That's just how we're thinking of it. But I certainly agree with John that if you're going to school, you could come down Lafayette, cross a bridge, and go through the Ice House and get to the school more rapidly than you can now. And I don't know how many kids do it now, but that,
handful.
yeah, that would seem, you know, a reasonable thing to add to the whole picture.
I like to hang out on the bridge during, especially sunset, because it's a really nice view. And I know that there are a number of what seem to be junior high and high school kids out there fishing, and they tell me that there are some bass and some nice sized pickerel in there. And I'm assuming that there are some native plants further upstream that might be worthwhile taking a look at to see if they're any value. But I noticed that there are a lot of people that walk through. Also, I'm a relatively new transplant into the community, and I really don't know enough about the history of why the town took the land for conservation purposes. And I'd be curious what the original intent, if you have any sort of document in terms of what the original intent.
We don't take land, people give it to us.
Okay, whether it was given or taken, I think it's a matter of semantics. And
Well, it may not be though, because we don't have the power, we don't have the money to
Well-
take land.
Well, but it is conservation. It is conservation, and I'd be curious to see originally when it was taken or given.
Right.
And I think at this time of night, I don't think we should really belabor the point, but really to try to figure out what was it a wetlands? Was it a pond? What was the original? What was it when the land itself actually came into the town's possession?
Fair
Maybe we can
point.
chat about it another time. I
Good.
got a kid.
And thank you very much.
Is that comment though, Marion, do you have a question or a
I just
comment?
wanted to add the comment, I don't know a lot about the history, but I do know that John Cronin does know a lot
Oh,
about
yeah.
it. He was a park commissioner, and I think he spearheaded an effort to have town meeting buy that property.
It was purchased.
When development was
Yeah.
taking place all around it in order to keep one area undeveloped, and because the pond itself, he thought had great value. So I think John Cronin deserves the credit.
Definitely.
In the sense that he took the initiative, and he would probably continue to be interested in what
Definitely.
happens there.
Yeah.
That's all I know about the history. I do agree with all the general comments, especially Tom's. I think people like it as a natural area, but there are some things that need to happen. There's not as much vandalism and drinking there as there used to be because it's a security camera now, and the police do drive down the bridge. There was also a great initiative by Northeastern University engineers to build the bridge that's in there now.
Is that the
No
same
cost
group
to the
that's doing the
town.
dam study?
No, I don't know, but they,
No, this was a long time ago, what, 12, 15 years ago?
it was
There's a
maybe
picture of my-
2006 or 7.
Oh, they built the dam, oh, no, I mean the bridge, yeah, right, I know that. But isn't it the Northeastern group that's doing the dam study?
It's quite possible
Yes,
because,
I don't
yeah,
know,
Right?
I don't know if it's their engineering department though, these guys are engineers.
Yeah.
these were engineers, but the point is that you've got the right idea, because if you do your site walk, you identify various needs, and you now have a list of projects, some of which can be done by volunteers, some of which will need funding, some of which could be done by somebody from the Appalachian Mountain Club coming in and getting paid to help the town do a small crossing or something. That might need some money, but not a lot. Once you've identified the projects, the town can set up a gift account to accept donations, because some people will want to give money, some people are not going to go out and chop down brush, but they might donate something. So I think that this is the way to begin it, and, I mean, I really think you can do what's needed in that sort of low-key fashion, as long as the Conservation Commission supports the effort, and it's there every step of the way, because it's conservation land.
Right.
You can't do anything there, really, without your support and
It's momentum. Once you've already made some significant momentum in the fact that you're here and you're talking about this, and continuing to make that minimum, even if it's a minimal level of momentum, will help push it forward and bring other people involved and get more effort, and the whole thing will kind of keep going. And it doesn't need to go fast, and it's probably preferable if it doesn't go fast, but if it just has a consistent improvement.
That's a plan, great.
Good?
I was out of the room, but I understand there was a question maybe more about the overall history of the property. I've learned a lot in
Yeah, the ice
the
house.
last little bit about it.
Yeah, and Marion may just have given us a clue as to where that came from, on the north side of the ice house. There are two pieces there, one to the town, one to the Conservation Commission.
These were property owned by the Lamb estate. The Pope owned all of essentially here and around. And starting in the 1870s, took ice out of Pope's Pond.
Yeah.
There were 2 large, 1 acre in size ice houses that were founded next to the pond. The old buildings that are on that property are the old barn, an office, and workers' quarters, and then a small remnant of one of the ice houses. Pope and then successor owners of the ice business used to dam up the entry to Pine Tree Brook and flood. So there are various photographs and surveys that we had over time that show Pope's Pond being substantially flooded on either direction, really into more shallow area where it would freeze quickly and less cold area, and they'd be able to pull ice out. Ultimately, in the 50s, the 40s, the Metropolitan Ice Company of Boston, which was then the owner, sold to the Hendry's ice cream business. I think they took ice out for the purpose of manufacturing ice cream at the Hendry's building in Lower Mills. And in the 50s, it was sold to an architect named Rugo, Albert Rugo. He lived in the main house, had an office with other employees in the office, and eventually subdivided these lots. It's a Residence B district, so each of these lots is 20,000 square feet with 100 feet of frontage. And he subdivided these lots. There was a roadway was preserved. There are plans that show roadways that would cross, all sorts of subdivisions that were laid over this, obviously never built. And I think at some point, while all of that was being contemplated, the town got smart and acquired all of this area. I understand that down here, the last house down, I think is maybe in foreclosure. It's substantially unoccupied. It's one of several that I'm aware of where the owners seem to be in the wind.
Yeah.
The lender is paying the taxes so that the town is not foreclosing on the tax title.
Yeah.
But because the syndication of mortgage financing in the last 8 to 10 years, the mortgages have been sold and resold. The question of which entity really is the mortgagee and owns the right to foreclose is a question. And federal law prohibits the lender from speaking to anybody without the consent of the owner, the borrower. So there's a small property next to the Knights of Columbus property that is essentially vacant. There's another property on Canton Avenue that's across from the Carberry property that is essentially vacant. Those properties are in foreclosure. The banks aren't moving to foreclose, and the town would love to see something happen. They could foreclose on the tax title, take title, maybe have an auction, create some new value, turn it over, and do something positive. But that's one of those properties because its owner's in the wind. Who do you talk to? If the town could get access to that property, you could participate in some of the things that what you're talking about is how to create better access through this area and in, and really complete that. I know that Ken Stone is not here, but he's had a notion of a...
Jeff
Stone,
Stone.
not Ken
Yep.
Stone, Jeff Stone.
Yep.
He had a notion of a brook walk that would really start at Yulin Rink and come along either side of the pond, carry across here, follow along Pine Tree Brook to Turner's Pond, connect to the trail around Turner's, and then connect all the way down to the point where the brook enters into the Ponset River. And he was looking to, he was reaching out to us at the time when we were talking about the rezoning of the property to see whether or not that made sense and would it be something that could be contributed to. So, a redevelopment here obviously would be something that could contribute to some of the improvements that would be done here. I know that we are coming back in October. There will be a zoning effort to rezone this property. It will be substantially similar to what's been proposed, probably a little more density with some residential on top, but that's all slowly congealing and coming back. We'll be back in October and kicking off a range of other meetings in the meantime.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks, that's very helpful.
May I make a comment?
Of course.
Okay. Hi, I'm Cheryl Tagayas, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 9, and a member of the Planning Board. And I would like to make a pitch. I think it's a great idea to improve access around the pond. But I'd also like for us to consider the elderly and maybe young families, people with strollers, so that part of the pond anyway can be enjoyed by some of those folks whose mobility may be a little bit more limited, especially with the Home Inc. development basically across the street. If people who live there could get some enjoyment of the pond, I think it would have to be maybe a little bit different surface. I walked the pond, I think in the fall, and I did see a lot of the things that you said also on the east side of it, and maybe that part's not accessible to everyone. But if there is some section which could be made more accessible by people with more limited capabilities, I think that would be a Similar to what's around
benefit.
Turner's Pond, which
Yeah.
was done a couple of years ago.
Yeah, the most likely, I think, aspect of that, it's a really good point. I think the most likely candidate is the section on the west side from Lafayette, because the town actually, over the years, has done some improvements along those lines, so the grade is much flatter. Unfortunately, when the bridge was installed, it was installed at a higher level, so that would have to be dealt with probably with some sort of a sloping ramp or something like that. But that would be probably the most likely access point without changing. We are, as Tom said, our approach wasn't to come to the pond or the trail with any sort of an agenda, but more to sort of improve what was there, just sort of improve the existing conditions. But I have thought about that aspect about how someone could come in from the west side, but then kind of meet up with the bridge that's about a foot higher than the grade. And that was probably an engineering thing that, they had to do the bridge the way they had to do it, but there wasn't a consideration of how anybody could get up to the bridge if they couldn't make that step, but.
And maybe it's a
it would be a
platform
good
on
thing.
one side in which one could
Like a
view.
viewing platform.
Viewing platform.
Like at Houghton's Pond, for instance.
And you would have to figure out how one would get there, right? So if
Right.
they're coming from the Parkway or coming from, I guess it's Sumner Street, so how one would get to that viewing platform. But I think, and maybe it's through the Blue Hill Ice, development, is how they would get there. But it's something to bear in mind when you go out and do your walk, I think.
It's a great point, and I'm embarrassed because I should have made the point. Tom, you made a comment, and I appreciated your sensitivity to sort of preserving the wild nature of it, but Charlie Gamer really brought it home to roost here with us, 10 years ago, I guess, when he started, in getting better access for the disabled around Turner's Pond. And there was a lot of, controversy about what the path bed would be and who was going to use it and all that.
Motorcycles and cars.
Motorcycles, yeah, they had motorcycle gangs coming in, and the devil's disciples were going to gather there. But he led the charge on that, and that you make a great point, Cheryl, so thank you for doing that.
Well, I know that the Americans with Disabilities Act, there are recreational facilities come under that now, golf courses, et cetera, so that are open to the public. I don't know the jurisdiction on this, but it would be something worth looking into as well.
Right, thank you, and I agree with that. All right, well, I think Mike's comment about momentum is important, so
Thank you.
keep it going. Right, so
And maybe we'll
plan
just
on
talk
meeting-
about a date.
Right, we'll set a date, but
And I will let Michael and Tom know, I have their emails and they can inform the
Super.
rest of you.
But it'll probably follow the May 17th meeting.
Correct.
But it's usually, we do it once a month, so it's not like,
It's a Saturday.
yeah,
It's a
it'll be
Saturday morning.
We start at 8 o'clock, and we've done it for years, decades.
Thanks for your time.
Just want to add before you go, from my point of view, and I was an original member of the Milton Conservation Commission when it was established in the early 1970s. You've a laudable initiative. That was a dream then, and it's a long time since then. I would encourage you to, as you formulate where you're going, that you put it on paper, mission statement, the 3 bullets that you had in there, in your topic, umbrella areas that would reference what Tom was talking about, so that it would take care of wildlife, including fish migration, opportunities, possibilities, existing or that could exist, that should exist. Build in a human safety element. Build in an issue relative to debris removal, and this brings up a whole host of other things, whether or not there should be fines for people who put debris in conservation land in the town of Milton. There are communities that do that, and they have very severe penalties for people who intrude.
Your
one
last
way or the
client
other.
was, he had to write an essay.
So, yeah, but that's, once it's done, it's done, but we need things
No, I agree with
that
you. I agree.
very, very permanent. And going back to our planning meeting of a year ago, these are some of the types of things that we might consider for sequel to that meeting, formulate and get into place. And whatever it is that you ultimately come up with could be a very nice template for use in other sections of the town, because there's plenty of need for it. So please carry on and let us see what you ultimately come up with, and we're happy to work with you from my perspective.
And obviously, any input that you have in terms of helping us formulate that type of plan. Obviously, it's a two-way street in terms of doing stuff.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good. Thank you.
And next on the agenda is additional business. Do we have any additional business?
Yes.
Other than Thursday?
No, we have, I put in your package, one is about the Milton Alva Marker facility, Logan Airport, they want to move the building. I'm not even sure if it's within our jurisdiction, you need a map to the building.
Isn't that location close to the stream on the side that goes into, you know, just where it is?
Yeah, we did a site walk.
Yeah.
Sort of across the
Just-
ramp.
Just beyond that.
This is in the triangle. I
It
mean,
is.
it's
It
like,
is.
what's the issue? Is it wetland? Or is it just adjacency to the river that's the issue?
I don't know. That's a good
It's-
question. It's in the flood zone.
Okay,
Yeah, it
given
is.
that, but is that just because of the adjacency to the river? And it,
Well, when we walked out there for
About
the
a year
drainage issues, but yeah, it was around a year ago. We were on the, I think we were on the other side of the ramp.
We were, yeah.
right, we were in the loop.
here.
Right,
As
exactly.
opposed to there,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think that, look at the distances here, 150 feet. But I don't know if that's from a stream, and it appears to be that the shaded area next to the houses, between, in this area right here, they're measuring to
off a
like
bank.
off a bank.
Which is off the other side of the on-ramp.
Right, but it would still be, it may be jurisdictional, but I wouldn't measure from there, I'd measure from there.
Actually,
could-
this came from Alan Bishop.
Okay.
My question is there any issue within that triangle of a wetland condition? And if the answer is no, I would say that this is a minor issue and we should allow them to do the removal without, because we're talking about something that's bordered on three sides by pavement.
Yeah, and restoration, isn't he? So what's the restoration if it is a wetland? He's talking
Yeah, but
about.
I don't think it is a wetland. I think
Well,
it's.
they have to take out a concrete pad that it sits on, and I think that's what he's talking about in terms of restoration.
Yeah, and he says it's 2 days' worth of work, and it's really, yeah, so it's the remove, I assume they're removing the fence, right? And
It's,
But it is in a flood zone, so it's jurisdictional.
Yeah,
but is it in the flood zone because of the adjacency to the river, or is it a wetland? And in which case that it has a, if it's a
Well, it doesn't
wetland,
have to be a wetland, if it's within the, if it's in the floodplain?
I understand the floodplain thing, but to me, the fact that it's bordered on three sides, on every side by pavement,
Yeah.
makes the floodplain, the flood zone issue kind of, I don't know, minor.
I think you should come before the commission.
I don't think that
You do.
Just to understand what he's
submitting an
needing to do.
NOI is a big
It's not a big deal.
issue, just do
It's
it.
the FAA.
I mean, I'll go down and help them
Yeah, we ought to do it, just.
remove it.
I'll let you move it if you get those planes off
Like, you know,
Oh, yeah.
the
Oh,
ocean.
yeah, we should
make a deal.
publicize
I
this.
think we should, I think he should come before, and I think we should answer the question. Is
Yeah.
it, you know, just buffer? Is it wetland? What is it?
I think we should go through the process and
Yeah.
Yeah, but can't they do that with a request for determination of applicability?
Yes,
I think it's an RDA as opposed to an NOI, don't
they
you?
could,
I do.
Because the
Okay.
key is whether or not
Yeah.
it's jurisdictional, and
Well, I
you're
think
going to
you,
take it out. I think it's a good idea.
Sure.
It's certainly a degraded area.
But I'd like to know,
I think that I believe that it's jurisdictional based on the river, based on the floodplain. But if it's not a wetland, then it's not a significant, we're not talking about a significant adverse impact.
but let's have this conversation when he's in front of us.
Yes.
If we have questions.
Oh, I-
Yeah,
okay.
then it's-
So-
And that's pretty rapid. I mean, the RDA can be, we can do it
Yeah,
quickly.
this is the
can we
FDA.
get back to him and say, submit an RDA now?
Yeah, that's what he's asking. What-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I do.
Yeah, come on, it's the FAA, they're not gonna be ready for years.
Thing's an ugly eyesore. I'll go down and help get rid of it. As soon
It
as
was-
they start.
It was deactivated 10 years ago, and they're only now getting rid of it.
10 years ago.
More than that?
All right, so will you ask them to file an
60.
RDA?
Oh, 60, really?
And the second part is on the town property. You live in Pensacola, to see if
I'm sorry, this one, oh, yeah.
and how I should answer her.
Well, this backs up to Turner's Pond, doesn't it? This is
I,
the area.
I'm trying to visualize where Ferncroft is, and
It
I
backs
know
up,
it.
it's just on the west side of Turner's Pond.
No, in Pope Swan.
I mean, excuse me, Pope's Pond, I meant Pope Pond. That's where it is. Just for-
I understand her concerns, and it's really just an issue of a sidewalk and saying how much can be removed.
No, because the issue is DPW cannot get to these trees.
Oh, I don't think it's a DPW issue, it's a,
Well, Conservation Commission owns the land, so if the trees need to be removed.
There's no access to
prune.
them.
I think what she's asking for is pruning.
Okay,
She's not asking for removal, she's asking for pruning.
No, didn't you tell me she wants to get the trees out of it?
I think it fell on her window, isn't that what she was saying?
Yes.
That she thinks they're a danger.
what that is?
Yeah, she said it's one of the outer glass pane in a window got broken by a branch falling. But when I read it, she's not asking for removal, she's asking for pruning.
Yeah, she said, I love the trees, but I think they need maintenance.
Maintenance, yeah.
She's
So,
not asking for removal.
yeah, so this isn't,
Yeah, and John.
Well, what about the trees growing up, not
Just
down?
that pond, it's
I
past
don't know,
Ferncroft. She's
that's
right
an
here.
arborist issue, I mean, it's.
I don't know.
Yeah, so
But
it's,
how should I answer it? Because the problem is that for you to be pruned, DPW still do not have the equipment.
they don't have a guy that climbs trees?
No, they don't.
This is what we had up at the high
So
school.
we have to
Yeah,
rent
well,
one.
how did we deal with the high school? Right, do we
I
have
thought
to
they did it.
They did it at the high school, and now they're pushing back because money was just cut from the budget, and he said, no.
Okay, so the
That
question,
It's something that
Well,
the
her-
commission's
her
gonna have
cousin
to
could
address
do it
at
because
some
it was-
point.
okay, well, the question is at what point do you prune it at grade? I mean, just drop the tree.
Well, if the DPW could get the equipment in, or their men, they'd be more than glad to do it, but when they have to spend $2,500 to do it, and it's coming out of their budget, they're concerned about that.
But the only way they'll prune something is off of a truck? They won't climb a tree to prune a tree?
I don't think they've ever, no, I think they use cherry pickers.
Yeah.
They do, that's the
I
only way
don't
they
think
do it.
OSHA would allow.
Pretty rare.
I'm
It's
old
not
school.
that rare.
I wouldn't think it
No,
would be that
one of the,
rare.
one of the guys that worked on my
Yeah,
son's
yeah.
property climbed
Here,
ropes.
basically, all you hear is,
They do it.
bucket truck in.
Yeah, that's not about
Yeah.
Then
Want me
any
to go
Joe
by
Schmo
and
can do
It'll be
it.
very
talk to
Yeah,
her?
yeah,
I'll talk to
if
her.
you could,
Like
and
next
just-
week, okay?
And see,
Yeah, I'll look at it
if you
and
could
see.
find out how they
I
could.
know,
be
Hunt does
removed.
it with ropes.
Yeah, I do it, yeah. I'll talk.
They
to her.
did my
This is her
son's
number?
property that way.
Yeah, I'll give her a call.
Yeah, just tell us
Okay,
what,
so is the response to her
Okay.
that we're not opposed to pruning, but that the town doesn't have funding for pruning?
Well, Judith is gonna take a look at
I'll
it,
go take a look at it next week.
and see what it needs.
see what it needs.
But, I mean, based on what we're saying right now, we're saying the town doesn't have funding, doesn't have access, and therefore doesn't have funding to do the work.
Well, they will
We're
have to
not-
pay someone like Hans, a town tree to go and do it.
But we're not opposed to her if she wants to prune them, if she wants to have them pruned.
It's on our land,
it's
and
on
that's
our land.
exactly what these guys are just in here
Yeah.
for. They're saying some people are clear cutting their backyards. That's what they're talking about.
This is on the other side, right?
No, that's right.
But it's
yeah.
something we have
This is
to
on,
address.
this is on
It's on
the
the west
Frank
side.
It's on the west side
West side, yeah.
of Pope's Pond, yeah.
In other words, the commission owns all this property, but we're not maintaining it, and that's an issue. And so when a resident moves in and says, I have all these trees, I'm afraid they're gonna fall on my house. And as a commission, we get $2,500 a year. It's something that,
We don't have the money, but I, yeah.
it needs to be addressed in the future.
What about the funds that we have?
Yeah, we can expend those up to $15,000 a year
Right,
for environmental purposes.
right.
Well, this is a concern, it's a safety concern on our land.
It may be, but
But
what,
you also set a precedent.
yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry? Yeah,
So where do you draw the
Yeah.
line?
Precedent, yeah.
You set a precedent.
The money's no good sitting idle.
that's true, but we could become like a
Pruning company.
Oh, yeah.
pruning
We
company
can't
for
do that.
DPW. Now,
But we can't.
We'll prefer to
well,
plant
if we
trees
had-
than.
I get calls, Arthur, they're saying, hey, you guys, take care of this. Are you, I was asked to make a formal request to the selectmen that they fund
I remember.
something, a couple of things.
Right.
And so I did the first one, and the second one I said, ooh, this sounds like a budget issue to me.
Right.
Joe's getting pushback from the warrant committee, so he's trying to offload it on us to go to the selectmen to have them order the
Well,
money from somewhere.
A, the
They were
limit-
going for free cash that they
The limit
want.
would be restricted exclusively to conservation land. Commission.
Oh, we're restricted on we've got a revolving fund. That's already restricted by town meeting.
And B, criteria.
And we actually expanded the criteria for, what it can be used for. And I think it's sufficiently broad that we could do something. But
But have
we
the
get, Kathy
criteria.
gets calls all the time.
Well, dude, the problem is, we have a lot of people, like even, Oak Pond, people have been dumping their debris, grass clippings, their Christmas trees, and now they wanna sell the property, like, oh, you have to come and clean it out.
I know.
But they're the ones that created the problem to
Right.
begin with, and that's why I think,
And the one up
That
on
maybe-
the Lyman Road,
That's the
Yeah.
same situation.
Yeah.
Exactly coming to mind as I listened to the discussions and saw the map.
right. So let's take one step at a time, because this might be, as you said, a safety concern, and it might be something that's kind of on us.
Right.
But we haven't seen it, and this doesn't help me at all. I don't know where this is,
Right,
where our
it's
land
not-
is.
yeah.
So if you could, do a scouting reconnaissance
I will.
for us, and then report back. And I'm not just trying to kick the can down the road. I think it's a legitimate issue, and we have to address it.
and if you think we should call landscapers to get proposals, then I'll call landscapers to get proposals, what it would cost.
I think,
Oh,
I think,
you wait a minute. The
But
last
to
time
do-
I
to
saw
do
that,
what?
remember the guy that at the high school?
Yes,
And we got somebody said, oh, it's gonna cost,
2,500.
2,500.
no, it was 4,500. And I know where it came from, and that was a letter from DPW saying it was it was DPW saying it was gonna be $4,500. And we all looked at it and said, wait a minute, it's not gonna cost that much to take a tree down.
Right.
So I'm just afraid if we start the bidding process, and we don't have the backing, when the train leaves the station, if we ask for a bid from a landscaper to go on it and clean it,
yeah.
and then, we've got to make sure we've got the funds, and that's the priority, because we're going to have to start prioritizing. If we get into the business of maintaining the land, we're in deep trouble.
That's exactly what I was talking about in terms of criteria.
But you're
Has to be
saying that the
extremely
DP
strict.
Yeah, but DPW doesn't, we're saying DPW doesn't have ability to go into limited access areas because they can't climb a tree for, which I find amazing, but they can't climb a tree to prune a tree. They can only do it from a bucket truck, which means that anywhere they can't take a truck, they can't prune, they can't do any work, which is
Doesn't help us.
Yeah, it sounds, it's like, what, really? Yeah.
I know. I thought they did have a tree climber.
Not that I'm aware of.
I thought they had a tree climber that can drop a branch, but just, you couldn't drop it at the high school. It looked like the tree was leaning towards the house on Canton Avenue. That
It was on it.
What's that?
Shed, it was on the.
It was on the shed, right, but there was a remaining tree that they wanted to take down. And I thought if it was leaning the right way, there was a tree climber that could drop the branch.
Right.
But if they couldn't drop it, they needed a bucket to hold it, or some kind of a crane to hold it. That's the expense. So we just need to have, as you said, Arthur, and you're correct, criteria
Yeah.
that we have to use pretty strictly, because
I
we could
agree.
get cleaned out and,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Very
that's why I
quickly.
think it has to be addressed with the warrant committee, the selectmen, or,
I agree with
because
that.
we're getting more and more
I agree with
telephone calls saying this is conservation land, and
Right,
Now,
fix it.
I think one other additional business we need to discuss is the Milton Land Trust, in fact, moving over to the Wildlands Trust. So if they're sort of delegating a duty, they have an obligation to oversee these properties for us. And if they're thinking of doing this, they have to do it without permission. They can't do it on their own. They can't say, we're obligated to do this and we're gonna let someone else do it instead.
You mean the Milton Land Trust? I don't know if it was, if they had to have the approval of the Attorney General or not, because it's
Well, I
a
wonder
charitable
what-
entity.
Our approval as well. We're the ones who oversee what they do. We're the ones who
No,
designate.
no, we're not.
Their land is,
Totally private.
It's not our land.
their land is different than the
It's
conservation.
completely different.
Yeah.
Completely different.
And private.
Okay.
And private.
I thought they were overseeing some of ours as well.
No. Just like down at, remember when we went on to Michael George's property, you know, down by
Yeah.
Forbes Woods?
Right.
And the issue was, he was gonna build a wall into,
Right.
that was Milton Land Trust
It
land.
was, yes, yeah.
That I think, you know, Bob Greeley and Richard Heath
Uh-huh.
and I think John Dolphin had purchased some land, and they sold some of it and they gave some of it to the Milton Land Trust. So that's one of the ones that John
Those are-
Cronin was involved in.
Okay, I was mixing them
Yeah.
up. Okay.
John, it's interesting that the land near the high school came up, because that's been on my mind, driving by it about 3 days a week. It'd be a great place for a Milton Conservation sign. As I work throughout New England, community after community, they
Yeah, I
have,
see the signs.
Yeah.
you know, nice signage. We don't have a stick in the ground. And,
The one, if you're coming up from the Parkway,
well,
towards the high
that's
school
just
to the
one
right,
example, yeah. That's
there's a
just one-
sign that's buried in there somewhere, up by the back of the football field. Yeah,
No,
there
I'm
is a,
talking about the one that's on Canton Avenue.
oh, sure, okay.
Do
yeah.
you have an image of a sign that you like?
Well, what I was thinking is, what if we were to go to, we have a sign committee in town. Go to the sign committee if we're serious about this and get some of their input.
Yeah.
And we could get some photographs of what other communities do.
Right. What do we want the sign to say? And how
what's the
big is
point-
it?
And what
does
is
it
the
look like?
point of the sign? Why do we want this sign?
It does a number of things. One is it educates people to conservation. It tells people, many of whom in this town don't know that we exist, let alone that we have properties and jurisdiction and so on down the line, even though they should. But it sets a frame of mind, and it's a visible manifestation of the fact that there is a Milton Conservation Commission. And if you don't post it, nobody knows.
I've driven, you drive down, I live in, I work in southeastern, and you drive through, you know, some of the roads that cut through, and there are signs that tell you this, and they have names for the different areas. Like, you know, you're driving through and it's a the Southeastern Conservation Commission, and it tells you the name of the area, and it doesn't tell you really a description, but it kind of notifies you that that's what the area is. It's not just open land. It's actually.
In Sandwich, where my second home
Yeah.
is, and where I've been affiliated with since I was 3 years old, every single Conservation Commission owned piece of property in that town of 45 square miles is posted to the public.
It's
Right up
nice.
by the
I think
road.
it's nice to see.
I like that,
Yeah.
And you go out to Concord and places
Yeah,
like that,
they're all-
it's
yeah.
really so nice. Tremendous ambience, really classy. And now you can get the stock made out of material that.
Will
you don't have
never
to-
go
right,
anywhere.
You know it, you're in the business.
What about the sign at the police station? It's like, wooden and it's gold and, it's like embossed and it's.
I'm not into gold leaf.
Glass.
but-
Gotta admit, it's a beautiful sign.
It's a good sign.
It is a good. Okay, so we're all set?
One other issue, and that is Thursday night. You can make Thursday night?
I can make Thursday night.
You cannot, you can? 7
I-
o'clock will be done by 8.
Okay, well, I can make Thursday night, and I just need to make sure we'll be done by 8.
We'll be done by 8. Right, if not,
Sorry, I can't be there.
okay, but I'll give you a heads up.
If you want me to participate by call from New York, though,
Oh, sure, we can do that, oh, yeah,
conference call.
absolutely. You have to sign this one.
Are we adjourned?
What's the second one?
One is for Hillside, modification, one is for 37 Chesterfield.
Oh, this is Keola's,
Yeah, you're not signing that one.
the only one we've got is Chesterfield. There's a second one, I'm sorry.
Kathy,
So I'll hold that
if
one.
it's
Sorry to ask
possible
this
for
this way,
there
but
to
if
be a call-in
Conference is in.
on
do I still need
Thursday
to
night,
attend?
Okay,
conference call,
Just so I don't have to
I'll
change
try
my.
and do that,
okay.
okay?
That's a
So-
I would
good
have to,
question. I don't know.
See if they
email
have
you.
the
I don't know
capability, if
he
they
can
don't,
trigger a
don't.
quorum
Okay.
on the phone.
I just don't know if there's a
Okay,
telephone.
well, I'll plan on making, I'll
And then all
see
you
if I
have to do-
can
If there is,
push
just
it
email
off
me.
after. I don't remember
Call
if it
in
starts
number?
at 8
I
or
will,
9.
I will.
Okay.
So if it starts at 9, no issue at all. If it starts at 8, I'll try to move it around a little bit.
Did we vote to adjourn?
We voted, all in favor? We did. We're adjourned.